Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So currently we're 15 days away from Election Day, and yesterday we covered the early vote data that is preliminary, but we're starting to get a lot more of it out of Arizona and Nevada. And Democrats are in a lot of trouble, and today, still as it stands today, Republicans have a 35,000 vote lead in the early vote, and compared to this point in 2020, the Democrats led by 5 percentage points. So you're seeing a 13-point shift to the Republicans. Now, keep in mind, Arizona was neck and neck in the 2020 election. Republicans have added a net 220,000 new registrations since then compared to the Democrats. It's a state that Kamala Harris has really no plans to go to, and you look at it, and it's like this is a massive shift in favor of the Republicans, and it's not happening in just Arizona. It's also happening in North Carolina in the early voting. We could talk about the absentees, where Republicans basically in 2020 had a disadvantage in the percentage of the absentee requests by about 26%, and it got even worse for them in 2022, despite them having a decent year. Right now, the gap between Republicans and Democrats, it's stabilized. They've stopped kind of gaining, but still it's at about 9.5%, a little bit more than that right now as things stand today, which is absolutely huge. And a lot of Republicans prefer to vote in person early as well. And you look at what's going on there already. Democrats did have a decent lead. Republicans typically do better a little bit later on. But as things stand right now, this is the update from yesterday. The Republicans and Democrats, they are knotted up essentially in the in-person early vote. And Democrats do this thing in the black community called Souls to the Polls on Sundays. And there's only going to be one more of them after yesterday. And Democrats rarely gained in the black vote share overall, which is absolutely just abysmal, especially compared to their gains the same day in 2020. And honestly, I wish Republican-leaning churches would do the same thing, because it's a good idea to boost turnout, and there's a very low turnout rate in the white evangelical community in some of these places in the South, like North Carolina and Georgia, which could prove decisive. But still, you look at this, and the black percentage of the early vote is down significantly in person and by mail. It's roughly 19.4% in the in-person vote, and in the mail-in vote so far, I believe it's at 11%. Which is absolutely abysmal as it stands right now. So when you look at this and you see the combined early vote returns so far, it's at 18%. When you look back at 2020, it was significantly higher at the end than that, and typically it started off higher and then it dips as time goes on, and in 2022 it was 18.52. Right now it's currently, despite being fresh off of Souls to the Polls, it's at 18.51. You talk about black turnout, that's crucial. Democrats are not winning North Carolina and probably not even Georgia if you're not supercharging black turnout, and so far they're not doing a very good job of that. Kamala Harris is not doing a great job of it. And we see this just across the board. When you look at Georgia in particular, today it's down to 24% of the electorate. And even yesterday in Georgia with Souls to the Polls, there was barely an increase. The cumulative is 27.1, and it was in the mid to high 30s in 2020 and 2022. So already you are seeing the share of the black electorate dip significantly for Democrats. They're not turning out their low propensity voters. That's a major problem for them in these 3 states, and it confirms what I've been saying all along, and that this election cycle, you're not going to see black turnout hit the margins that it did in the 2020 election. You're not going to see it at 63%. I think you're going to see it more at 58, 59%, somewhere in that range, and that's being a little generous as things stand today. But if you just don't even touch the margins there, look what happens to the map. Already North Carolina goes for Trump by over a point more than it did in 2020. Georgia firmly in Donald Trump's column. And Trump is gaining like 10 points on net in the polls compared to the polls back then. The polls typically do overestimate Republicans with black voters, but you're seeing what's going on. Even if we say Donald Trump on net, he just gains like, maybe 5-6 points with that demographic. already, you don't even have to touch anything else, Donald Trump would be in a prime position for victory. And every single indicator we see points towards that, especially as the top concerns for black voters right now are the economy, prices. And a lot of people look at Biden's administration, then they look at Trump's administration, mainly black voters under the age of 45, because there's less of like this Democrat-aligned partisanship there compared to some of these older generations. And I'm not saying Trump's going to make massive gains, but he's going to make noticeable gains based off of that fact alone. And turnout's going to be likely down to the point where this might even be underselling it. And already Harris is not really in the best position as things stand right now. And it's happening in North Carolina. It's happening in Georgia. It's happening across the board, even Pennsylvania, where it's a little bit more of like a heavy male state for the Democrats, even though Republicans are still doing comparatively well there. And a lot of people seemingly don't understand it because there's a lot of nuance. But places like Allegheny County, where are the votes coming in from? Heavily in those inner ring suburbs that are filled with a lot of these affluent white suburbanites. And then you look at Philadelphia, in the minority areas there's not really enthusiasm for Kamala Harris whatsoever. And she only has 2 weeks to really change that as things stand. And relying on an electorate that's just going to show up on election day in full, despite them not exactly doing that in 2020 and 2022 at the rate they would need to win in 2024, is not the place that the Democrats would really like to be in as things stand right now. And when you look at the polling, Donald Trump, nationally, he's within 1%. You're seeing him lead some polls and narrow in some polls that are not exactly these right-leaning pollsters. They say the zone is being flooded. Folks, the zone's being flooded with what right-leaning pollster? Rasmussen, which has been in every single aggregate going all the way back to 2016 that has underestimated Donald Trump and the Republicans. It just doesn't really add up as things stand to say that the zone is being flooded, at least not nationwide. And if the popular vote's this close, Trump is not losing the Electoral College. And in terms of the video, I kind of wanted to make the point that Donald Trump is slowly freezing out the path for Kamala Harris, because if he's really winning Arizona and he's winning Georgia and North Carolina, and Democrats, they're going to obviously get all the states that they usually would get here. We'll give them all of these. And I'll be doing my second to last prediction on the channel tomorrow. And we'll even give them Nebraska's 2nd district. We'll give them New Hampshire, New York, Virginia, which is still, I wouldn't say fully yet to say in play, but it's not what it was in 2020 for the Democrats, to the point where that margin is going to be something to watch. Colorado, New Mexico, and Hawaii, those will all be in the Democrat column. So you look at this and it's like, okay, well, Harris has to sweep the board. She can afford to lose Nevada. She could afford to lose it, but she needs Wisconsin, she needs Michigan, and she needs Pennsylvania if this is the case. And what demographic is really going to determine those 3 states? Is it going to be these, college-educated white voters, or is it going to be that, I guess you would say, blue-collar white voter without a 4-year degree? It's mainly the latter, and those individuals are Trump's core base. He does better with them in this region than any other Republican. And you would think Kamala Harris, compared to Scranton Joe, who's going to do better in northeastern Pennsylvania? Who's going to do better? San Francisco Kamala or Scranton Joe? And that does carry over into places like Michigan and Wisconsin, where you have a large share of, Polish American voters, which, again, Biden had a connection to that community. Kamala Harris does not have that connection to this community. And it's true that she doesn't really have I guess you would say, a defined self for why she's going to be fit to lead the country. And that's kind of why she's not really been able to win over a lot of undecideds in the polling. It's why she keeps lagging behind, because Democrats, they understood Biden was not popular. On every issue, he was underwater. So they force him out of the way. Kamala Harris takes over as the nominee. The only problem is that Kamala Harris, not only does she have all this flip-flopping and policy baggage from when she last ran for president and her campaign just flamed out, but also she hasn't really provided what she would do differently than Biden when people don't like what Joe Biden's been doing. And she's like, I can't think of anything I would change. Trump is bad, and just trying to run on the Trump bad narrative. That's not going to work down the stretch when Donald Trump is more popular than ever. If you look at favorability ratings, you need to provide something that is going to, I guess you would say, be different and new and appeal to more voters, get them on your side, because, the TDS crowd is not going to be enough to win an election, especially as, people will talk about like Trump fatigue or whatever, which doesn't really add up, doesn't make sense. He's adding new voters who have never voted before to his coalition at a disproportionate rate even. But you talk about the Trump hatred fatigue, that's also a thing. They've been running with the same talking points for the past 9 years. And still, it's not sticking. Half the country in the polling is siding with Trump. He's never polled this high before. He's polling nationally at 48.3. He never polled above 45.6, I think, in 2016. And you talk about the fact that his base has grown. That's kind of going to be a big problem for her, and she's not getting her base out. And when you look at the early voting data, the 4 out of 4 Democrat voters, they're actually voting at a higher rate in these states where even Republicans have an advantage, like Arizona, compared to that 4 out of 4 Republican voter, meaning the voter who votes in every single election cycle, the past 2 midterms, the past 2 presidential elections. Those voters are likely going to turn out for every election anyways, and Democrats are turning a lot of those out, but those lower propensity Democrat voters, a lot of them are staying home, and a good chunk of them do tend to be low income, upset with the state of the economy and the country, and Donald Trump is doing what he can to tap into that demographic this year, and we'll see if it pays dividends for him. But this is basically the map. All Trump needs to do, you could forget about Nevada. Even if you want to give her Nevada, he needs to win one of these 3 states to win the election. Either he gets Pennsylvania, he gets Michigan, you could say maybe Wisconsin. Technically, if Nebraska's second went red, which the Nebraska state legislature just completely folded on, possibly to their detriment, and then you look at Nevada, that would get him to 269. Trump would win in the House if that was going to be the case. But still, one of those 3 Rust Belt states right there, that's what Donald Trump would need to go out there and win. And if he gets one of them, which I think you could even make the case he's favored in all 3, especially because polling has underestimated him in all 3, both election cycles. Let's say he just gets Wisconsin, boom. He just gets Pennsylvania, boom. At that point, he wouldn't even need Arizona or Nevada. But that's a whole nother discussion. But either way, it just proves that Donald Trump is in the strongest position ever, and he's boxing Harris out at 270. She has one path, essentially. If this keeps up, which again, it's early. I'm not trying to get people to be complacent. I'm trying to get people to go vote. Make sure you vote, and make sure you get everybody you know to vote for Trump in these swing states, especially because that's how the election's going to be won. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.